Welcome back to another tutorial on Power Pivot. This is Trisha Jaktiani, and in this tutorial, I'm going to show you the difference between using the DAX function, which is the related function, to carry the data from another database into the current database to perform data analysis, versus using the relationship method and to perform the data analysis in the pivot table itself. Now, you may think that why is it necessary to understand this? One thing is that when it looks similar, but it is not the same. While when you want to create a DAX function, which is the related function, you have to first create a relationship between the two tables and then perform the DAX function, which we are already aware. However, why do we need to create a related function is first question. Second, moving back to our relationship method. In the relationship method, we just use the pivot table and drag the information from different databases and perform our data analysis, which is also fine. Then why do we need the related function in the first place? Let's first see our databases that we have here. I have the sales information available with me, which has the product ID, the category, revenue generated from that product ID, and the customer ID, that means who has uh, bought that product, is given to me. Not the name of the customer, but just the customer ID. The second information that I have is the customer detail, which has the customer ID along with the other information and the discount that has been, or a flat discount that is given to this customer. Doesn't depend on what product they buy, how much product they buy. It all depends on just the flat number that is given to them. What I need to do is I need to identify the gross revenue. That means revenue minus the discount that is given to them. Now, if in order to do that, what I'll do is I need to first know if, of course, on your sales data, I will have the customer ID will be duplicates because it depends on how many products they have bought. While in the customer detail file, my customer ID is going to be unique. What I need is I need to pick up the discount from the customer details sheet and add it to my sales data. Simple VLOOKUP, but because we are performing the Power Pivot, we can do a related function. First and foremost, add both the databases to the data model, which I have already done. I'm going on to the diagram view and going to link this both, which I have already done as well. So linking the customer detail, I'm just going to do it once more for your information. Just pick up the data from the customer detail because that is unique, add it to the customer ID in the sales. Now it is one-to-many, which is already created. I can go back to the data view. If I want, I can first perform the calculation using the pivot table to see how does that work. Now that it is created, I can go on to insert pivot table and say add this data to the data model and click on OK. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up the customer ID from the sales data, or maybe the customer name if I want to from the customer details page or the database. For that, I'll go to all. Yeah, so the customer details in the all, I'll be able to see all my uh, databases or the tables linked. So I'll take customer name. I'll pick up these revenue from the sales data, put it in the values. Now it is showing because it is automatically been now I've already created the relationship. I need to pick up the discount and add it to this. Now, simple way to do that in a pivot table is just go on to the pivot table and create a calculated column or the field. Now, here the problem is calculated field and items are grayed out. Why? Because you're creating a data model. And so you cannot perform these calculations here. In that case, you have to go on to the Power Pivot window to perform your calculations. Hence, the easier way to do that will be to just go on to the Power Pivot window and perform a related function which we have already seen in our previous tutorial. Related function will automatically pick up the related tables that we have. Our related table is going to be the customer detail because I had already created a relationship between the two, and so when I say related, it automatically picks up that. What I need is discount. Close the bracket, enter, and gives me the list of discount that is against those customer ID. Now it is very, very simple. I just need to go on to the next column and create my calculation. I can do it in the same column also if I want to. by just saying the revenue minus the related, this one. And here you go with the data. So what is it giving me? The total revenue that I have generated minus the discount that I have done. Now, this was very simple to create a calculation using the DAX function, which is related function inside the uh, Power Pivot window. And that's the reason I have created the DAX function. I can also perform measures as much as I want from here and also create a simple uh, total of the revenue that is generated, or you can call this, like I said, you can call the name that you want to on this column number that is given here, and move on to create a pivot table from this list. Now this becomes very, very simple when you have to create a calculation inside your uh, Power Pivot window itself. It is not simple to create a calculation using the relationship model. When you have a lot of calculation, I would avoid using the relationship model here. While again, like I mentioned earlier, the relationship has to be created before you use the related function in the Power Pivot. This was about what is the difference between the two related functions. Before we go ahead and we created a relationship, what I did was when I was creating the relationship, you must have seen that it automatically picks up 1 to the star sign here. What is this 1 to the star sign? This is very, very important part that we need to understand. Because this data, which I told you in the start of the tutorial, that this data contains the unique value. And in my previous tutorial, I also mentioned that we pick from the unique value and drag it to the value which has many data. Because just like we look up, what do we do is we pick up the data from the unique value and get drag the information from there. It's the same thing the related function does here. So, but before that, we need to create the relationship between the two. Now, why is this one to the star? This means one to many. What does this mean? One to many in the sense data which contains unique value will be one. There will be no duplication in there, but your many will have the other database which is there will have many of that particular data which is linked. You need to understand that in Power Pivot, you will only be able to work with one to many relationship attribute. You cannot work, or you cannot work with many to many or one to one. While one to one is possible, you can link it. You can get data which can be related to each other one to one. It may show one to one, but it is not the efficient way to show that. It's always, whenever you're working with Power Pivot, you need to understand that you should have one data which has the unique value. You should have another data which will have many values in it. Now, what if when you're creating a relationship, there are chances that if there both databases have duplicate values, it will automatically throw an error, and the error will be something like they're both the values do have duplicate values, and that's the reason we cannot run this file or we cannot work with this file. So let me see another example that I may have here. What I have done here with the same database that I had, I've added some duplicate values in the customer detail also. So if I go back to the Power Pivot window and try to create a relationship now, let's see what happens. Here, if you look at, I just need to refresh it so that if there is any change to my data, I'll have to first refresh the data. As soon as I refresh my data, you will see that the sales have 110 rows while customer details have 111 rows. I'll close this to let it refresh. So once this is refreshed in the data view, you can see both the data has been refreshed right now. Of course, it is giving an error because I have removed the relationship between the two. Now I'm going to try and relate the customer data with the sales by using the customer ID. See what is the error that it gives me. The relationship cannot be created because each column contains duplicate values. Select at least one column that contains only unique values. So you need to be very, very mindful when you're creating a relationship between the two tables, because relationship only works with this kind of information where one data or one database will have a unique value database, while the other database can have multiple values. So if you have multiple tables in your database and you have all the tables containing duplicate values, you will not be able to link them. So the first and the foremost that you need to understand is you need to have a database which is unique. Just like you're working with VLOOKUP, where you have a data which is unique, and that's how you actually perform the calculations using the VLOOKUP function. So hope you understood when you're going to use the related function and where you're going to use the relationship method. Also, what we spoke about was how does the relationship attribute works here, where the relationship cardinality, which is a term used in Power Pivot, where one to many is the relationship cardinality in the Power Pivot. Keep watching for more of such tutorials. I'm going to cover a lot of DAX functions after this. Thank you for watching.